they simply serve as a reminder of the diversity of beliefs across America, and they can serve as a warning for a major party. I think that's what a lot of these Tea Parties do, is they are serving as a warning to the Republican Party to come back to their roots. However, again, the only way that they're going to have influence is to be involved in the system. And these third parties generally are spoilers more than they are actually contributing to elected more conservative people. I tell people if the party's not conservative enough, get involved and make it more conservative. Because you can't make it more conservative than I like. So, that will be the key. And I think that our party has organizations, whether it's at the very most local level or any level you want to do, to get involved. And I think our mission is obviously to promote conservative values and to build that infrastructure so people who want to get involved can do that. Anybody have any other questions? Because I do want to talk to you about the Lincoln plan. Yes, sir.
On what he touched on, real quick, and I'll make a statement then ask a question. I've taught at the collegiate level. I've served on public school boards. My wife teaches at the public school. I'll stand up. I'll make a statement, then I'll ask the question in regards to what he was speaking of. I've taught at the collegiate level. I've served on public school boards. My wife teaches at the public school level. What are we going to do as a state to regain our educational system from the liberals? Because that's something we're losing rapidly, and it's something we're losing our young people on.
And I think that's what he's talking about. Did everybody hear that? We're talking about education. I think it is critical. You're right. I mean, back in the 60s, it's really phenomenal if you haven't looked at this. Back in the 60s, when they started taking prayer out of school, the Ten Commandments out of school, I love the Supreme Court case, I say that facetiously, that says we have to take the Ten Commandments out of schools because children may actually read them and follow them. I mean, just nuts. But what's interesting is when you look at that, and then you look at teen pregnancies, you look at dropout rates, you look at SAT scores. They literally tanked during that time. The liberals took over the education establishment, and it's very tough. Now, I will say in Texas that is one area where conservatives really, they're in a fight for their life and they need your help. I'm not sure who's your SBOE representative. Do y'all know offhand? Is it Don McElroy? He's a good guy, if that's who it is. The State Board of Education, quite frankly, we've got 7 conservative members of that Board of Education that are really strong conservatives, and they have fought for the children of Texas over and over, and they usually can go over and find one other person, sometimes a Democrat, to vote with them in the majority. But they are really in a fight over the standards. Let me just say real quickly, any Texas citizen can actually serve to review textbooks and things of that nature. And if you do have an area of specialty or you are interested in that, we can put you in touch with people to do that. But I think supporting that elected State Board of Education and making sure that we are giving them the support that they need, because it is critical. And that, I mean, our conservative members are being targeted this year because they stood strong for those principles. I think at the end of the day, it is interesting because Texas is bucking the trend on education as well. We have more people enrolling in colleges. We have a lot of the conservative measures that they put into place actually start kicking in next year. But while the rest of the country, you saw SAT scores and those scores going down, you actually saw those rise in Texas. When I talk to teachers, what they tell me is a couple of things. Is discipline is very difficult. And number 2, they spend too much time doing the paperwork as opposed to teaching. And that's pretty much, and they have to teach to the test. Now, I think, Senator, you guys made some changes on that front, but I do know that they're trying to make that better for them. But at the end of the day, those teachers need that support. And quite frankly, the federal government needs to get out of the job of education because it has no business being there in the first place.
Don't wait for it to come from the top. I served on the school board in Greenville, and if you served on the school board, you'll know what I mean. We had meeting after meeting every month where no one came to the school board meetings, and we were losing votes 4-3, like pulling teeth to get phonics, which we ended up doing, and Saxon math. We lost all of our budget votes 4-3. If you want to affect schools, go to the local school board meetings, because a lot of it, a conservative principle, is local control.
Absolutely.
And we've tried to preserve that for the school boards, but that's worthless if you don't go to the school board meetings and stay involved at the local.
Yeah.
And I was there, I've been there, did that, I served on the school board, and we lost votes because no one came, and the other members, the other 4 members, didn't think that people either noticed, much less cared.
Right. No, in fact, and it was up in this part of the state, and as any of you remember talking to me about this a few years ago, raise your hand and let me know. I was in a meeting and I was taking questions, and somebody said, well, we have an all-Democrat county, what can one commissioner do? And I started to answer the question, and a man raised his hand, and he said, ma'am, can I answer that? I said, sure. He said, let me tell you what happened to me. I'm the only Republican commissioner in my county. He said, I knew I was going to lose those votes 4-1. He said, but I went in and started asking questions. He said, I would say, now, why don't we do a bidding process? Why don't we always give this particular company the contract? Have we ever looked at other companies? Have we ever? And he said, before long, the people started coming to the meetings and started asking questions. That one man, although he was in the minority, had a huge impact in that county, because those other county commissioners knew that somebody was watching, somebody was asking questions. It does make a huge difference, and that's why we really always talk about the fact that all politics is local. And I do believe that's true. Despite the federal government's intrusion into every area of our lives where it should not be, at the end of the day, all politics is local. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really focused on these county commissioners, county sheriffs, county judge races. It makes a huge difference, because if you put our principles into practice at the local level, then what you start seeing is better government at the local level, and you build trust. Plus, if someone gets in office at the local level and they don't act like a conservative, it's a whole lot easier to take them out at the local level than it is once they've reached the state house or the state senate or the U.S. Congress, for heaven's sakes. So it really is critical on that. Let me just tell you about President Lincoln. He put this plan out over 150 years ago. It still works today. He said, I'm going to paraphrase, obviously, but he said, you divide the country, or in our case, the state, into small districts, which ultimately for us are precincts. He said, you divide our state into precincts. He said, then you make a master list of voters. You determine for whom they will vote. You have those who are undecided talk to you by those they trust, and you turn out all the Whigs, or in our case, Republicans, to the poll. That's really a lot like we do this today. And I just wanted to remind you, we organize precincts to do a couple of things. The primary one is to maximize the Republican vote. I told people time and time again, I am not the Women's League of Voters, and I am not interested in registering everybody who can vote. I'm interested in registering people who think like I do to go vote. Now, that's just the bottom line. So if we were trying to maximize the Republican vote, how do we do that? We identify Republican voters, we register Republican voters, we inform Republican voters, and we turn out Republican voters to the polls. In this district, if Republicans came out and voted in Mark Homer's seat, we would have a Republican in that seat, because it's a 61% Republican district in this seat. I looked at the numbers yesterday. Keep your friends and neighbors informed. They're going to look to you. If you're in this room, you have a huge sphere of influence, because everybody knows you're interested in politics. And don't they come to you asking you what you think come election time? You have a great deal of power and influence. We talked about what Lincoln said about obtaining a master list of voters. We have that. We have voter roll. We have 13 million voters. We have voting history back to the 80s. We have all kinds of information. You can literally download that at your desk and do walk list and call list. So let me just ask you this. What do you think is the number one determiner, if you will, of how someone is going to vote in November? Anybody want to guess? How you voted in the primary? Republican people who vote in the Republican primary generally vote Republican in the fall. People who vote Democrat generally, about 95 to 99% of the time. So the key in the early stages of campaign and election season is those swing undecided voters. You know, somebody can come to my house and they can tell me anything about a Democrat. I am not going to vote for them. I mean, I know what they stand for. I know what their party platform says. I know who their leadership is. And I know when they get together, how they stick together and vote. And I'm not voting for one. But it's amazing how many people are not like that.